Another fantastic episode of TsumaSho, episode 3, an absolute gut punch. The whole later segment of this episode just got me super emotional. This story just has the ability to drag those tears out of me, and I can't really stop it. But yes, getting the whole idea of him feeling like he pretty much wasn't there for Mai when she was at her worst, that she shut herself up in there, having Take acknowledging the idea that she's criticizing him, but at the same time acknowledging she's the one that left. I was the one that died. I can't really criticize you for this whole situation. But yes, additionally, getting into a deeper subject of, are they willing to move on? Are they willing to get remarried is really the massive question mark there. And this has sort of been something that has been sprinkled throughout the manga series up until this point, but it doesn't feel like the anime really wants to cover it. And that might be because they're trying to dodge... Yeah, let's just do the joke. The allegations. The allegations have been pretty much... He's not dodging them after this episode. Having a pretty much marriage contract put on the table, he's not dodging the allegations. But it did really have me kind of questioning, because when the episode 3, opened up, yes, it got into the present. They got Mai. And for those who don't know, this is something they skipped from the manga a while back. Like early in the manga, they actually go out shopping together and they buy this gift for Mai. They completely skipped it. So it did have me kind of questioning what else they've been skipping from the manga, and so I did a little bit of side-by-side comparison, and what I found out in the end is 2 things here. And I want to go over all the different things that they have skipped so far for you guys so that you guys know, but at the same time, I am acknowledging that some of this stuff might just be repurposed. They're doing a good job with this anime adaptation of not really necessarily skipping things, but more so bringing the important content of each chapter they skip and putting it somewhere else. A good example here is the skipped shopping with Takae and Keisuke. When they go out shopping for Mai's present, they end up bumping into the coworker. So, big shocker there. That's kind of a big significant thing, right? She literally seen this girl on his phone, and she's like, who is this? Is this his daughter? Is this his granddaughter? Really was a question mark there. Oh wait, Mai isn't married, so it's not her child. Who is this girl? Now suddenly the coworker ends up spotting Keisuke out shopping with this little girl, and she's going, oh no, is he into little girls? Like, they are literally, the coworker is believing that Keisuke right now has a little girl as that he's going out with or whatever. And so they end up confronting him, and then, yes, Take jumps in there and says, hey, uncle, who are these people? Are those your coworkers? Thanks for taking care of my uncle. He's kind of aloof or whatever. That joke kind of brings up. So they're kind of repurposing it by taking that whole segment of being caught, and they're putting it to the fireworks. Yeah, the coworker ends up bumping into him at the fireworks, and then that's when Takae shows up. Now, in the manga, she invites him to go look at the fireworks. The coworker does. So they're still kind of moving things around, but I think what they're doing good so far is they're sort of repurposing things properly so that those points get taken and they're still in the story. And I have to admit, I think they're doing a phenomenal job. Despite the fact that you might get upset at things being changed or moved around or skipped, I think the anime adaptation is doing really well so far. So let's get into some tidbits here, because I think there is some stuff that for sure I don't know how they could actually repurpose it, because they're sort of already on to the next step of these storylines. But yes, early on, the aquarium scene, when they first went to the aquarium, I believe in episode 2, a lot of stuff was changed in that whole segment. One main key thing being here is, yes, the first time that Keisuke has brought up what is he planning on doing now that he has re-met his wife. Yeah, the massive question mark is going to come up there. If anybody is sort of having empathy for Keisuke's character and the idea that he lost his wife, suddenly, out of nowhere, gone, suddenly she's before him again. But the unfortunate thing here is, yes, that she's a new kid. Like, she's been reborn in this world. They can't necessarily be together. That's why Takae keeps saying, you can't get chumming with me. Don't call me your wife. I am not your wife. I am somebody else now. You have to stop. This is nice that we get to see each other again, but you gotta be careful. And yes, from Keisuke's perspective, he doesn't care. He doesn't want to miss this opportunity. He has her again. He doesn't want to miss any chance they can have together. There's points throughout the manga they've kind of skipped already that emphasize the idea that Keisuke, back here, lost her at the point in which they were always promising to do something. One of the key things here was the fireworks. When the whole segment of the fireworks came into the picture in the manga, one of the things they had was a brief flashback where he was with the wife, Takae, and they were talking about how she kind of wondered if he wanted to go out on a date alone. Because they had Mai now, they never got to go dates together alone. So she was kind of questioning, do you think we should get somebody to watch her so that we can go on a date together? And what Keisuke said here was that we'll have plenty of time for that. Don't worry. Once mine gets older, once she gets married, then we'll have all the time in the world to spend together. And that's unfortunately, yes, one of those regrets that he has, that he wasn't ever able to do that with her. So he doesn't want to miss this opportunity, really, is what it is. And so, yeah, when it comes up the question mark of, hey, what are you planning on doing? Are you planning on getting married again? Are you planning on moving forward? He doesn't care. He's like, no. And here's where it gets established at the Aquarium. 8 more years. What? What are you saying, Keisuke? What 8 years? 8 more years before we can get married again. He's already planning. He's already planning like, yeah, my wife is back. And yes, this is kind of weird that this whole thing happened. But still, once she's a legal age, who really cares? He doesn't really care so much about the idea that some people might be upset about age gap or whatever like that. As long as it's legal, as long as society accepts it, who cares? So that's already kind of being brought up there. And I don't think they've ever mentioned the 8-year thing throughout the entire series. The other thing that happened during the Aquarium was, yes, at some point, Takae went to go use the restroom after this whole thing was brought up, and she was a little bit kind of frustrated by it. She goes off to go to the restroom, and she ends up getting lost. And Keisuke can't get a hold of her, so he panics. He has a total PTSD moment at the Aquarium. He believes, flashback in his mind, how quickly that happened that he lost her. And he's feeling like, I've lost her again. Something that happened. This PTSD kind of just wells up inside of him. I finally have her back, and now she's gone again. And he starts panicking and rushing through, looking for her, and eventually, yes, she finds an employee. Apparently, she has a massive issue with getting lost. Like, this is an ongoing joke for Takae. She always gets lost. So yeah, he eventually finds her and just breaks down because he's just so happy he didn't lose her again. Our next thing that's being skipped, and I really don't know how they're going to repurpose this in the story. I'm assuming at some point we'll maybe have a full entire episode on this, so this might actually be covered, but there is a segment in here which I don't think can be at this point. And that's really Takeru. Takeru is the boy in Takae's class. He's really interested in her. We had one brief scene of him where he's like, oh yeah, I'm okay with girls like Takae. And then he walks home with her and talks about how he knows that her name has changed, that she's having problems at home, and he's concerned for her. He's a good boy. Takeru is a good boy. Well, yeah, right here, when they're walking home, he confesses to her that he likes her and wants her to be his girlfriend. And this turns into an ongoing thing. Every single time Takeru is around Takae, he's trying to get her to be his girlfriend. And this extends to, at some point, Mai ends up being contacted by Takae and says, hey, this boy that confessed to me, he wants me to go to his soccer game to watch him play. And so Mai goes there to the soccer game with Takae, and they sit down, they start talking about Takeru and how he's really popular and how he's a strong player and he's cute and all that kind of stuff. And he's very bold and all this kind of stuff. He's a good boy. Like, Mai is like, man, and here's where I think it might not fit in the story anymore because of what they've done with episode 3, is that, yes, Mai is acknowledging the idea that, hey, he's a good fit for you. Right here, Mai is acknowledging, yeah, Mom, he seems like a good boy. Why don't you accept it? Why don't you go out with him? Of course, Takae is like, no, he's an elementary school kid. Elementary school kids shouldn't be dating yet. No, I'm not going to do that. Like, she has no interest in him. Obviously, there is a conflict similar to Keisuke. This entire time, we have this conflict that Keisuke is confronted by his passed away wife, who's now an elementary school kid. This is the same for Takae. Takae technically is dealing with the same issue here, is that she is an older woman that now is in a body of a child, and she's surrounded by children. She has no interest in them. So there's that conflict that's happening there as well. But no, she's just like, elementary school kids couldn't be going out right yet. They shouldn't be going out with each other yet. What are you talking about? But again, it brings up the question mark here is Takae even considering the idea of, yes, meeting somebody new her age, or additionally, is Mai okay with the idea that her mother, who has been reborn, is going to find somebody else besides her father? Now, this is why I don't think that they're going to cover all this stuff with Takeru, because right here, Mai is pushing the mother to a new relationship. What happens in episode 3? Mai is upset at the idea of the father finding somebody new and moving on. But technically, in the later parts of this whole segment, when they're walking home, they do have this moment where Mai is like, yeah, I do understand the idea that they can kind of move on, but as long as mom is mom, I don't really care. It's almost getting one of those ideas where mentally for the person dealing with the situation, mentally for Mai right now, as the daughter dealing with the situation, she's almost going through what typically people go through with divorces. She's literally going through what you would kind of experience with a divorce. That the mom is no longer going to be with the father, and she's going to get remarried. And that Keisuke, the father, he might go off and get remarried. But as long as they're still who they are, she's fine with it. But again, as we see with this episode, she's not fine with it. It finally kind of blows up, and she just doesn't like the idea. She just wants them all to be together. I don't care what the circumstances is, what's going on here. I just want us as a family to stay together. And that's why Keisuke does that. He goes in there and makes that little marriage certificate thing. It's kind of nice that they still put her old name in there. Please don't put her new name in there, because that's just going to be like, if somebody finds that, you're going straight to jail, dude. But yes, putting everybody's family on there again, it's really Keisuke trying to reassure to Mai that no matter what happens, and it really does feel like right here, and even in the manga, Keisuke is even acknowledging the idea that something might happen with Takae. She has her own life and her own experiences right now, her own family. Something could take her away from them. They were sort of acknowledging that with her birthday. And this idea that Takae has her own situation. She doesn't want to talk about it, and that's always been her. The mom has always been that way. Takae has always been that way. She always keeps things to herself. She doesn't speak out what's bothering her. And he's acknowledging that something's happening even in that moment. So he acknowledged that something might happen there. So it's a really cool, interesting little bit there. And again, kind of gets more into Mai as a character and what she's sort of dealing with in the idea of her mother and her father kind of moving on. Yeah, after the whole soccer match thing, that's when it gets into the whole situation that Takae is dealing with at home. The fact that her mother and her father broke up and all that kind of stuff. And this is something that's starting to well up inside of her, that she fears that she won't be able to see Mai or Keisuke anymore. And yet, Takeru, the next day, just comes up and is like, hey, Take, thanks for coming to my game. I really wish you came there as my girlfriend. Hey, I have another match coming up. Can you go there as my girlfriend? And she literally blows up on him. She's like, stop it. You're making misunderstandings. In her mind at that moment, she's thinking about the fact that she'll never see her family again. So she's getting this stress that's building up inside of her. And now she got this little kid going, hey, Take, could you be my girlfriend? He's like, stop it. I don't want to talk about that right now. Right now, I'm dealing with some bad stuff. I don't want to hear it. But yes, that was interesting about the situation with the parents. Take's parents is the weirdest change they made with the anime adaptation. Specifically in the anime adaptation, when she comes home that one day, and we first get the meeting of the mom, which, again, gut punched me when I first read it. When she first comes home in the anime, she mentions the idea that, yes, her parents got divorced last year. But the anime says that she has forgotten about a lot of that past since regaining her memories of her previous life. I don't remember that ever being in the manga, and I double-checked it, and maybe I'm just overlooking it. It's never mentioned that. So I'm very curious what that means. I'm very curious why they added that in the anime. Maybe they're foreshadowing something. But it's very interesting that they added that there. Specifically in the manga, they add more context to the family. And the idea that, yes, back in the past, the parents used to fight all the time. They were incompatible. They were always fighting with each other. When they drank, they got at their worst, and they nearly got close to striking each other. So she's even getting to the point where they got near to domestic violence and all that kind of stuff. So it gets really bad in that regard. But yes, at some point, they ended up getting divorced. They broke apart. The mother kind of just became very closed off. She barely ever talks to her anymore. And yes, additionally, it seems to the point where now the mother just has completely lost interest in her daughter completely. So it gets a lot more heavier than what we sort of have kind of glossed over with the anime itself. But yeah, that's kind of where it gets into also the idea of her acknowledging her own weaknesses and the idea of the fact that she is now in an elementary school girl's body. There's nothing she can do. Physically, there's nothing that she can do. She can't fight the situation. She can't push back. She is just a young kid, a young defenseless little kid, which is like, ugh, sucks. I freaking hate that kind of stuff. It just tears me up. Another interesting little tidbit that they skipped over was they did have a brief moment in the manga. They did sort of show what led Take to kind of finally take the leap to finally confront her family. And that was when she was at school. The summer break was coming up. And Miyuki, who's the bratty little kid at school in their class, the one that's always kind of trying to start a fight with Take, she mentions the fact that, yes, during break, she's going to go overseas with her family. And she's trying to brag to make Take jealous. What is Take's response? That's great. You should enjoy your time with them. Literally have, yes, this lady inside the body of this child that died and missed out on her opportunities to spend time with her family. She's like, don't make that mistake. Be with your family and have fun. That's great for you. But yes, because of that whole situation, like right after that, that's when she passes by Keisuke and all them and immediately goes up there and knocks on the door. So it was kind of an interesting little thing to kind of, I guess that was her final push to finally go up there and talk to them, which is kind of sweet. I mentioned before, but yes, there's a lot that was changed with the whole situation with the fireworks. Like I said, technically the coworker had invited Keisuke to go to the fireworks. That's why he was there. So he went there with the coworker. Mai never went to the fireworks. She was never there. And this is when Take came there with her friend Himari, which we barely see much of Himari, but Himari kind of pops up on a regular basis. She's the one with the glasses in her school. But yes, Himari and Take go there together to watch the fireworks. Mai, I believe, is at home or at work, and then Keisuke comes there with the coworker. And in the manga, the emphasis in this whole segment, because again, the whole thing with them meeting Take and all that kind of stuff has already been done. In the manga, the emphasis in this whole scene is really getting into the regrets that they have. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the moment where we have that little flashback where Keisuke is saying, we'll have plenty of time in the future to do this stuff alone together. You know, not worrying so much about the idea that they're always having to go out with Mai and all that kind of stuff, which again is those regrets that he now has. Now, what triggers Mai to be upset in the manga is that later on, yes, the coworker comes by their house and Keisuke and Take and the coworker are sitting down in the middle of the living room playing cards. And Mai comes home and sees how chummy they've gotten. And that's where she gets really mad and gets really mad about the whole situation about him moving on and stuff. Now, the last bit that has skipped from the manga that I don't think that they can possibly enter into the series now, because I'm assuming this new person that Mai has met in the anime is going to be somebody that she's going to pursue. I don't know yet at this moment. It just seems like this guy looks very unique. He looks like somebody that Mai is going to be interacting with a lot now that she's working for this company and obviously helping this individual with learning the computer. He just seemed too unique. He seems too charming. She's got the blushing stuff going on. You got her coworker is trying to set her up. I'm assuming she's possibly going to interact with him more in the future. I don't know. I haven't read any further in the manga past the point in which she met him. So I'm assuming the anime is going to be skipping Mai's first boyfriend, her first date, which, yes, is this guy named Mito. At some point, she ends up getting roped in by somebody else to go on a mixer. She ends up meeting this guy named Mito, and he seems like a pretty okay guy, and they end up getting set up together. Over time, yes, he says that he wants to see her again. He wants to go on a date with her alone, just the two of them. And yes, Mai accepts. I really loved in the manga, there's a brief scene where Take kind of brings Mai off to the side and does her makeup up and just kind of gives her some advice about the idea of kind of listening, feeling it out, and all that kind of stuff. It was really, really cute. But yes, she ends up going out on a date with this dude. He's a very pushy and rude dude. It does not work out. I mean, he pays her a lot of compliments. Like, he's constantly saying how she looks cute. Her figure when she's eating is cute or something like that. He gives her a lot of compliments, but he's just very rude. Like, he's just constantly drinking. He's pushy. He's yelling at the waitress all the time. And it kind of just goes that way. Nothing really happens, but they're kind of fine. And that all eventually leads to when they go home. He decided to drink. And while he was drinking, he asked her, should you be drinking because you still have to drive home? He drove her there. He said, don't worry, I'll get a proxy driver. For those who don't know, it's basically somebody that shows up and they will drive you home in your vehicle. So when they finally get back to their car, there's no proxy driver. And so she's like, what are you doing? Did you not get a proxy driver? Why didn't you contact a proxy driver? What are we going to do to get home? And he says, don't worry about it. I can drive. I won't have a problem driving. She slugs the dude. Mai literally slugs the dude. Bop, right in the face. Says, how dare you? My mother died from a car accident. So that's kind of finally saying exactly what happened to the mother. I don't think any time before this they have ever indicated what happened to the mother. Right here, she said that my mother died in a traffic accident. Now, it doesn't specify if it was specifically somebody was inebriated, was drunk, and that was what caused her. She just literally is saying, how dare you say that? Mainly on the idea of Mai having this trauma caused by a vehicle, somebody obviously maybe negligent in some way. But she's mad at this guy because he is kind of just brushing off the idea that he might possibly cause somebody else harm. She tells him, if you went out there and you struck somebody and you accidentally killed somebody, No amount of apologizing, no amount of punishment to you could ever fix that mistake. Right here, she's saying, this damage that was done to me, somebody took the life of my mother, and nothing will ever undo that. No matter, again, if somebody was negligent and they were punished or they apologized to Mai, it doesn't change the fact that she lost her mother because of that. Nothing fixes that. And so she's like super mad at this dude. And she basically just says, I'm going to go get a taxi. She gets in a taxi and goes. It's just like, okay, that was kind of, oof, right out there. I'm assuming at some point they might bring up that again, but I don't know. It just seems like they're going out of their way to sort of avoid the idea of her with a new guy. And again, with them now getting into this new guy, which I'm assuming she might get with, I think he's on the cover art. So that's even another indication that they might be close together. So very, very strong stuff. But yes, when she's on the phone with Take, she's like, it's fine. You did a good job. You're okay, right? Yeah, everything's fine. And she gets home and literally Keisuke is waiting at the door. And he's like, did he do anything to you? Did he harm you? Let's go down let's go meet it with a lawyer. And she's like, no, it's okay, Dad. I'm fine. It was one of those things where honestly reading through that whole segment, I did get a little bit of anxiety because it felt like this guy wasn't chill. Like this guy was a little bit overbearing. And I was really afraid that it was going to turn into something really pushy, like he was going to get handsy with her. But they didn't really do that. It was really just came down to she has this trauma. He's just kind of very blah about the idea of him possibly, getting in a wreck. And this is something that she wasn't happy with. She's dealt with losing somebody due to somebody being possibly negligent, and she wasn't having it. So it's a very interesting little bit. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then there's like a couple more little kind of additional moments where it kind of hits on the idea of him waiting 8 years for her. He does make a joke at some point about it could have been 6 years, but they changed the law. But yeah, obviously questioning often about the idea of remarrying. Would Keisuke want to get remarried? And he's like, no, I don't really plan on doing that. I'm perfectly fine. He's just like, well, if Mai gets married, you're going to be alone. That's fine. I'll be fine. But it's really Take kind of not being okay with that. The idea that she left him because she died, and now she's afraid that he's just going to live alone for the rest of his life. She doesn't like that. Again, Take's mindset is really set on the idea that, yeah, I'm fine with this idea of waiting 8 years because I do love Keisuke. I'm fine with waiting those 8 years, but what could happen in those 8 years? There's really no definitive of those 8 years. What could happen in those 8 years? He could pass away. She could pass away again. Something could happen to her again. What would happen if she died again? I mean, those are the question marks that come. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed me rambling on, talking about all the altering and changes and possibly skip content of TsumaSho. I just really like the series. I was already looking at through the manga to kind of compare it, and I came up with a list of stuff, so I figured I'd share it with you guys. So hopefully somebody out there enjoys some little tidbits or just me rambling about TsumaSho. Maybe they didn't enjoy it that much, but I hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, if you did, hit the like button down below, comment. Let me know what you think of these little skip bits. Do you enjoy the way that they're adapting it? I guess it's a good question mark there. Again, I mentioned that I kind of like how they're moving stuff around. I really do feel like the anime is being very kind of to the point, hitting each points, keeping it moving. I think it's really the pacing. I think it's really just the pacing. They're doing a good job of kind of taking the manga and just kind of making it very precise and the pacing perfect. So anyhow, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe before you leave. If you like this content, you want to support the channel more, I have links in the description below. Greatly appreciate it. Until next time, y'all take care.